The cards hit the table with a sound that would haunt Emma Norton for the rest of her life. Or at least until that dusty afternoon 3 weeks later, when everything changed in ways she could never have imagined possible in the rough frontier town of Watsonville, California, in the summer of 1882. Emma sat frozen in her chair at the Golden Spur Saloon, watching as Vincent Caldwell spread his cards across the green felt with fingers that moved too smoothly, too confidently for a man who had been drinking whiskey all afternoon. 4 aces stared up at her, mocking the 3 queens she had been so sure would win her the money she desperately needed to keep her father's ranch from falling into the hands of the bank. Instead, she had just signed away something far more precious than land or cattle or the modest house where she had grown up. She had signed away herself. "Well now, Miss Norton," Caldwell said, his voice dripping with false sympathy as he folded his hands over his substantial belly. "It appears that you belong to me now. A year of service, as we agreed. You did sign the contract before witnesses, after all." Emma's throat tightened as she glanced around the saloon. The other patrons had gone quiet, watching with a mixture of pity and fascination. She had been so certain she could win. Her father had taught her to play poker before he died 6 months ago, and she had never lost a significant hand. But desperation made people foolish, and Caldwell had known exactly how to bait the trap. "This is not right," Emma said, her voice shaking despite her efforts to sound strong. "Those cards were too perfect." "Are you accusing me of cheating?" Caldwell's voice turned cold. "Because that is a serious allegation, Miss Norton, one that could get a person killed in this town." The bartender, old George, caught her eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. Everyone knew Caldwell was crooked, but he owned half the town and had the sheriff in his pocket. Accusing him without proof was suicide. Emma stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her calico dress. She was 22 years old, tall and strong from years of ranch work, with dark auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and green eyes that usually sparkled with determination. Right now, those eyes burned with unshed tears of rage and humiliation. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow morning. 6 o'clock sharp. You will be working at my ranch, doing whatever my foreman tells you to do, cooking, cleaning, tending the animals. You will live in the servants' quarters and you will not leave the property without my permission. 1 year, Miss Norton. Then you are free to go, and your debt will be considered paid." Emma turned and walked out of the saloon without another word, her spine straight despite the crushing weight of what had just happened. The afternoon sun hit her face like a slap, and she stood on the wooden boardwalk for a moment, trying to catch her breath. Watsonville stretched out before her, a growing town nestled in the Pajero Valley with the coastal mountains rising in the distance. It had been home her entire life, but now it felt like a prison. She made her way down the dusty Main Street toward the small room she rented above the general store. The ranch was already gone, sold at auction last week. All she had left were a few personal belongings and the clothes on her back. And now, for the next year, even her freedom was gone. That night, Emma lay awake staring at the ceiling, her mind racing through everything that had happened. She kept replaying the card game in her head, analyzing every moment, and the more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that Caldwell had cheated. The way he had shuffled, the way he had dealt, the tiny hesitation before he revealed his hand. But knowing it and proving it were 2 different things entirely. She must have finally fallen asleep near dawn, because the next thing she knew, someone was pounding on her door. Emma dragged herself out of bed and opened it to find a wiry man with a week's worth of stubble and cold gray eyes standing in the hallway. "Emma Norton. I am Caldwell's foreman, Jake Murphy. You have got 5 minutes to gather your things and get downstairs. We have got a wagon waiting." Emma dressed quickly in her most practical clothes, a simple brown skirt and white blouse, and packed her few belongings into a battered carpetbag. As she climbed into the wagon next to Murphy, she caught sight of several townspeople watching from windows and doorways. Their expressions ranged from sympathy to judgment, and Emma felt her cheeks burn with shame. The ride to Caldwell's ranch took about 30 minutes, heading east out of town into the rolling hills, where vast cattle operations sprawled across thousands of acres. Caldwell's spread was one of the largest, and as they approached the main compound, Emma felt her stomach sink. This was going to be her prison for the next 12 months. Murphy pulled the wagon up to a small wooden structure behind the main house. "This is where you will be staying. Drop your things and come with me. The boss wants to see you." Emma did as she was told, her heart pounding as she followed Murphy to the grand ranch house. It was a 2-story affair with a wide porch and expensive furnishings visible through the windows. Caldwell clearly spent his ill-gotten gains on his own comfort. Inside, Caldwell sat behind a massive oak desk in his study, a cigar clamped between his teeth. "Miss Norton, welcome to your new home. Murphy will show you your duties. You will work from 6 in the morning until 8 at night with an hour for meals. You will not fraternize with the ranch hands. You will not leave the property. You will speak to no one about our arrangement. If you break any of these rules, I will add time to your servitude. Do you understand?" "Yes," Emma said through gritted teeth. "Yes, sir," Caldwell corrected, Emma's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Yes, sir. Good. Now get to work." The next 3 weeks were the longest of Emma's life. She woke before dawn every morning, cooked massive breakfasts for the ranch hands, scrubbed floors, washed clothes, tended the vegetable garden, and fell into bed each night too exhausted to even cry. Murphy watched her constantly, ready to report any infraction to Caldwell. The other servants, an older Mexican woman named Rosa and her teenage daughter Maria, were kind but cautious, afraid to get too close to someone who had fallen so far so fast. Emma learned that Caldwell made a habit of gambling with desperate people, always winning, always taking what they could not afford to lose. She was not the first person to be trapped in indentured servitude on his ranch, though she was apparently the first woman from a respectable family. The knowledge made her burn with helpless rage. It was on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 weeks and 2 days into her servitude, that everything began to change. Emma was hanging laundry in the yard behind the servants' quarters when she heard horses approaching the main house. She glanced up briefly, then returned to her work. Visitors came and went all the time, usually ranchers or businessmen seeking deals with Caldwell, but something about these horses made her look again. There were 3 riders, and even from a distance, Emma could tell they were different from Caldwell's usual associates. They sat their horses with an easy confidence that spoke of long days on the trail, and their clothing was dusty from hard travel. The man in the lead caught her attention immediately. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair visible beneath his wide-brimmed hat, and a strong jaw shadowed with stubble. Even from across the yard, there was something about the way he carried himself that made Emma's pulse quicken with an emotion she could not quite name. Hope, perhaps, or just recognition that here was someone who lived by his own rules, not trapped like she was. The 3 men dismounted and headed into the house. Emma forced herself to focus on the laundry, knowing Murphy would report her if she was caught staring. But her mind was no longer on the sheets and shirts in her hands. She found herself wondering who the stranger was and what business he had with Caldwell. She got her answer an hour later when Rosa came hurrying out to the yard, her face flushed with excitement. "Emma, you must hear this." Those men, they are professional gamblers traveling through to San Francisco. The tall one, his name is Nathan Zimmer, and he has a reputation from here to Texas. They say he has never lost a game that mattered. Emma's heart began to pound. What are they doing here? Caldwell invited them to play tonight. He wants to show off to beat the famous Nathan Zimmer. You know how he is. An idea began forming in Emma's mind, dangerous and desperate and probably foolish, but she had to try. If this Nathan Zimmer was as good as his reputation suggested, maybe he could see what she had missed. Maybe he could prove that Caldwell was a cheat. That evening, Emma found an excuse to bring coffee to the study where the game was being set up. Her hands shook slightly as she entered the room carrying a silver tray, but she kept her eyes downcast, playing the role of the obedient servant. "Just set it on the side table," Caldwell said dismissively, not even looking at her. Emma did as instructed, but she let her gaze flicker to the men seated around the table. Nathan Zimmer sat directly across from Caldwell, and up close, he was even more striking than she had thought. He appeared to be in his mid-20s, with intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His face was weathered from sun and wind, but there was something gentle in his expression that contrasted with the hardness most men in this territory wore like armor. As Emma turned to leave, those brown eyes met hers for just a moment, and she saw something flicker in their depths. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition of a fellow soul in distress. It was enough to give her courage. She made sure she was working in the hallway outside the study as the game progressed, cleaning the same section of floor over and over, while she tried to think of how to get Nathan Zimmer alone, even for a moment. Hours passed, and she could hear the rise and fall of voices, the clink of glasses, the shuffle of cards. Finally, near midnight, the door opened and Nathan stepped out. Emma stood quickly from where she had been kneeling, her cleaning rag still in her hands. "Excuse me, sir," she said quietly, her heart racing. "Might I have a word?" Nathan's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded and followed her a few steps down the hallway, away from the study door. Up close, Emma could smell leather and sage and something uniquely masculine that made her stomach flutter despite the seriousness of the situation. "What is your name?" Nathan asked, his voice low and surprisingly kind. "Emma Norton. Please, I need your help. Caldwell cheated me in a card game 3 weeks ago. I lost everything, and now I am bound to serve him for a year. But I know he cheated. I just cannot prove it." Nathan's expression darkened. "Tell me exactly what happened." Emma spoke quickly, keeping her voice to a whisper as she described the game, the way Caldwell had dealt, the impossible perfection of his final hand. Nathan listened intently, his eyes never leaving her face. "I have heard stories about Caldwell," Nathan said when she finished. "None of them good. But if I accuse him without proof, it will not end well for either of us." "Then play him," Emma said urgently. "Really play him. Watch for what I could not see, and if you can prove he is a cheat, maybe the contract he forced me to sign will be void." Nathan studied her for a long moment, and Emma felt as if he was seeing straight through to her soul. Why should I risk my neck for a stranger? It was a fair question, and Emma did not have a good answer except the truth. "Because I think you are the kind of man who cannot stand by and watch someone be wronged. Am I mistaken?" A slow smile spread across Nathan's face, transforming his serious features into something almost boyish. "You have got me figured out pretty well for someone who just met me." "All right, Emma Norton, I will play your game, but I need you to do something for me. Anything. Stay close. If I am right about how Caldwell is cheating, I am going to need a witness other than my companions, someone from this household who can testify to what they see." Emma nodded eagerly. "I can do that, thank you. Thank you so much." Nathan reached out and squeezed her hand briefly, the touch sending an unexpected jolt through her entire body. "Do not thank me yet. This could get complicated." He turned and went back into the study, leaving Emma standing in the hallway with her heart pounding and her hand tingling where he had touched her. She waited a few minutes, then found a reason to enter the room again, this time to refresh the coffee and empty the ashtrays. The game had grown more intense. Caldwell was winning, as he always did, and his face was flushed with whiskey and triumph. Nathan's two companions, who she learned were named Jack and Samuel, had already folded out of the current hand. It was down to Nathan and Caldwell, with a substantial pot sitting in the middle of the table. Emma moved around the room slowly, performing her tasks while keeping her attention focused on the game. She saw Nathan watching Caldwell with the intensity of a hawk studying its prey, his eyes tracking every movement, every gesture. "I call," Nathan said, pushing his chips into the center. Caldwell grinned and laid down his cards. "Full house, kings over tens." It was a strong hand, nearly unbeatable. Nathan looked at his own cards, then at Caldwell, then slowly back at his cards. Emma held her breath. "That is a fine hand," Nathan said casually. "Almost as fine as the one you dealt yourself from the bottom of the deck." The room went utterly silent. Caldwell's face turned purple. "What did you just say?" "I said you are a cheat and a liar," Nathan replied, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "You have been dealing from the bottom since the third hand. Clumsy work, really. I am surprised no one has caught you before now." Caldwell stood up so fast his chair fell over backward. "That is a damned lie. I ought to shoot you where you sit." "Go ahead and try," Nathan said, still seated but with his right hand resting casually near his holstered revolver. "But before you do, maybe you should know that I have been dealing straight all night, and I still have you beat." He laid down his cards, 4 queens and an ace, a hand that beat Caldwell's full house by a significant margin. "You see, the difference between you and me," Nathan continued, "is that I do not need to cheat to win. I am just that good. Now, I think we need to talk about Miss Norton's contract." Caldwell's hand moved toward his own gun, but Jack and Samuel were already on their feet, their weapons drawn and pointed at him. The rancher froze, his face twisted with rage and fear. "Emma," Nathan said without taking his eyes off Caldwell, "would you please tell everyone in this room exactly what happened 3 weeks ago?" Emma's voice shook, but she managed to get the words out, describing the game and the contract and the impossible hand that Caldwell had revealed. As she spoke, she saw Murphy appear in the doorway, his hand on his gun. "Do not even think about it," Samuel said, swinging his revolver to cover the foreman. "We have got no quarrel with you, friend. This is between your boss and us." "She is lying," Caldwell sputtered. "The girl lost fair and square. She owes me a year of service." "Is that so?" Nathan stood up slowly, gathering the cards from the table. "Then you would not mind if I examined this deck, would you? Because I am willing to bet that there are marked cards in here." "Probably been using the same deck for months." He held the cards up to the lamplight, turning them at different angles. Emma could not see anything unusual, but Nathan's eyes narrowed. "There," he said, pointing to tiny imperfections along the edges of certain cards. "Marked with a knife. So subtle you would never notice unless you knew what to look for. But enough that a man who knew the pattern could tell what card was coming. That is how you have been winning, is it not, Caldwell? You mark the good cards, then you know when to bet big and when to fold." "You cannot prove anything," Caldwell said, but his voice had lost its conviction. "Actually, I think I can. See, I have been playing cards for 10 years and I have seen every cheat in the book. This is amateur work, effective but amateur." Nathan turned to Jack and Samuel. Would you gentlemen be willing to testify to what we have seen here tonight? Absolutely, Jack said. He was older than Nathan, with gray streaking his beard. In fact, I would be happy to ride into town right now and fetch the sheriff. The sheriff works for me, Caldwell said desperately. Maybe so, Nathan replied, but the federal marshal does not. And I happen to know there is one passing through Watsonville this week. I met him yesterday at the hotel. I think he would be very interested to hear about a prominent rancher who has been forcing people into illegal servitude through rigged gambling. The blood drained from Caldwell's face. Indentured servitude was technically illegal in California, though the law was rarely enforced. But if a federal marshal got involved, especially with proof of fraud, Caldwell could face serious prison time. "What do you want?" Caldwell asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to tear up Miss Norton's contract right now. I want you to give her whatever wages she would have earned in a legitimate job for the past 3 weeks, and I want you to leave her alone for the rest of her life. In return, we ride out of here tonight and say nothing to the marshal about your operation." "And if I refuse?" Nathan shrugged. "Then we tie you up, ride into town, and bring back the law. Your choice." Caldwell stood there for a long moment, his hands clenching and unclenching. Finally, he walked to his desk and pulled out a sheet of paper. Emma recognized it immediately as the contract she had signed. Caldwell held it up, then slowly tore it in half, then in half again, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. "There," he said bitterly. "She is free. Now get out of my house." Nathan nodded to Jack and Samuel, and they holstered their weapons but kept their hands near them. "The money, Caldwell." "For her work." Cursing under his breath, Caldwell pulled open a desk drawer and counted out several bills. He threw them on the desk. $50. More than fair. "I would say she earned at least 100, considering the hours you have been working her," Nathan said mildly. "But I will let Miss Norton decide if she wants to argue the point." Emma stepped forward and snatched up the money before Caldwell could change his mind. "This will do." "Then I believe our business is concluded," Nathan said. He turned to Emma. "Miss Norton, I suggest you gather your belongings. I do not think it is safe for you to remain on this property tonight." Emma's eyes widened. She had been so focused on getting free that she had not thought about what came next. She had no home, no job, and nowhere to go. Nathan seemed to read her thoughts in her face. "My companions and I are staying at the Grand Hotel in town. I am sure they can find you a room. We can figure out the rest in the morning." "I cannot accept that," Emma said, her pride flaring up despite everything. "I cannot be in your debt." "You are not in my debt," Nathan said gently. "Call it a favor from one card player to another. Besides, something tells me you will find a way to pay me back." Emma wanted to argue, but the truth was she had no other options. She nodded mutely and hurried out to the servants' quarters to collect her carpet bag. Rosa and Maria were waiting there, having heard the commotion in the house. "Is it true?" Rosa asked, her eyes wide. "Are you really free?" "Yes," Emma said, hardly daring to believe it herself. "The cowboy, Nathan, he proved that Caldwell cheated." Rosa crossed herself. "Gracias a Dios." "You should go, quickly, before Caldwell changes his mind or sends Murphy after you." Emma hugged both women, then rushed back to where Nathan and his friends were mounting their horses. Nathan held out his hand and pulled her up behind him on his big bay gelding. Emma wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt, and tried not to think about how right it felt to be this close to him. They rode through the darkness back toward Watsonville, Emma's heart gradually slowing from its panicked pace as the distance grew between her and Caldwell's ranch. She was free. After 3 weeks of hell, she was actually free. "Thank you," she whispered, not sure if Nathan could even hear her over the sound of the horse's hooves, but he must have, because he reached down and squeezed her hand where it rested against his stomach. "You are welcome, Emma Norton." They reached town just before 1 in the morning. The Grand Hotel was the finest establishment in Watsonville, far fancier than anywhere Emma had ever stayed. Nathan helped her down from the horse, his hands strong and sure on her waist, and she felt that strange flutter in her stomach again. The night clerk was less than pleased to be woken up, but Nathan's money and quiet authority secured Emma a room on the second floor. As they climbed the stairs, Emma felt exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. "Get some rest," Nathan said as they reached her door. "We can talk in the morning about what happens next." "Why did you help me?" Emma asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since the confrontation in Caldwell's study. "You did not know me. You risked your life." Nathan was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face in the dim hallway light. "I have spent a lot of years traveling from town to town, playing cards, never staying anywhere long enough to matter to anyone or have anyone matter to me. And somewhere along the way, I realized that the only thing that makes any of it worthwhile is the chance to do something decent once in a while. To stand up for someone who cannot stand up for themselves. You looked at me in that hallway like I was your last hope, and I could not walk away from that." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "You are a good man, Nathan Zimmer." "I am a gambler and a drifter," Nathan said, but there was no bitterness in his voice, just honesty. "But I try to be decent when it counts. Sleep well, Emma." He turned and walked back down the hallway to his own room, leaving Emma standing there with her heart full of emotions she could not begin to name. The next morning, Emma woke to sunlight streaming through the lace curtains and spent several confused moments trying to remember where she was. Then the previous night came flooding back, and she sat up in the comfortable bed, hardly daring to believe it had all been real. She washed and dressed in her least wrinkled clothes, then made her way downstairs to the hotel dining room. Nathan was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. He looked up as she approached and stood politely. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in weeks," Emma admitted, sliding into the chair he held out for her. A waiter appeared immediately, and Emma ordered coffee and breakfast, acutely aware that she was spending money she could not afford to waste. "So," Nathan said once they were alone again, "have you thought about what you want to do now?" Emma wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, absorbing its warmth. "I need to find work. I have $50 which will not last long. And I need to figure out if there is any way to get my father's ranch back, though I suspect that is a lost cause." "Tell me about the ranch." Emma found herself pouring out the whole story. Her father, Daniel Norton, had owned a modest cattle operation about 5 miles south of town. It had never made them rich, but it had been a good life, honest work on land her grandfather had claimed in the 1850s. When her father died of pneumonia last winter, Emma had tried to keep the operation going, but she had not realized how much debt he had accumulated. The bank had foreclosed and the property had been sold at auction to cover the debts. "Who bought it?" Nathan asked. "I do not know. The auction happened while I was trying to scrape together money to stop it. By the time I found out, it was already done." Emma's voice caught. "That is why I agreed to play cards with Caldwell. I was desperate and stupid, and I thought if I could just win enough money, I could buy it back." "You are not stupid," Nathan said firmly. "You were desperate, and Caldwell took advantage of that. There is a difference." Their food arrived, and they ate in companionable silence for a few minutes. Emma watched Nathan over the rim of her coffee cup, studying him in the morning light. He had cleaned up since last night, his dark hair still damp from washing, his jaw freshly shaved. He was handsome, certainly, but it was more than that. There was a steadiness about him, a quiet confidence that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt since her father died. "I have an idea," Nathan said suddenly, setting down his fork. "It might be crazy, but hear me out. I am listening. Jack and Samuel and I are heading to San Francisco in a few days. There is a big tournament there, high stakes, and the winner takes home enough money to set themselves up for life. I have been saving for years to enter, and I think I have got a real shot at winning." "That is wonderful," Emma said, not sure where this was going. "The thing is," Nathan continued, "I could use some help. Someone to watch the other players, to be a second set of eyes. Someone who understands the game and can spot the things I might miss when I am focused on my own hand." "You have got a good eye, Emma. You knew Caldwell cheated even though you could not prove it. With a little training, you could be exactly what I need." Emma stared at him. "You want me to come with you to San Francisco? I want to hire you as my assistant. I will pay you a fair wage, plus room and board. If I win the tournament, I will give you a percentage of the prize money, enough that you could buy back your ranch and then some. And if I lose, well, at least you will have earned some money and seen San Francisco." "I do not understand," Emma said slowly. "Why would you do this? You do not know me." Nathan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You are right. I do not know you well, but I know you stood up to Caldwell even when it was dangerous. I know you care about your home and your father's legacy. And I know you have got courage, Emma Norton. That matters to me. Plus, if I am being honest, I could use the company. Jack and Samuel are good friends, but they have got their own lives. This feels like it could be the start of something important, and I would like to have someone I trust by my side." Emma's heart was racing. It was a crazy idea, traveling to San Francisco with a man she had just met, gambling for stakes she could barely imagine. But what other choice did she have? She had no job, no home, and no prospects in Watsonville. "What would people say?" she asked, thinking of her reputation. "We will get you your own room always. Everything proper and above board. Jack and Samuel will be there as chaperones if that helps. But Emma, I will not lie to you. There will be talk no matter what. People always talk. The question is whether you care more about what they say or about getting your life back." Emma thought about her father's ranch, the land she had grown up on, the home she had lost. She thought about spending the rest of her life trapped in Watsonville, always known as the girl who gambled herself into servitude. And she thought about Nathan's steady brown eyes and the way he had stood up for her without hesitation. "All right," she heard herself say. "I will do it." Nathan's face broke into a wide smile. "Really, really. But I want to be clear. This is a business arrangement. You pay me for my work and I help you win, nothing more." "Absolutely," Nathan agreed, though something flickered in his eyes that made Emma's stomach flutter. "Strictly business." They shook hands across the table, and Emma felt a tingle run through her at his touch. This was either the best decision she had ever made or the worst, and she had no idea which. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Nathan spent hours teaching Emma the finer points of card playing, not just the rules but the psychology of it, how to read people's tells and spot deception. Emma proved to be a quick study, her natural intelligence and observation skills serving her well. She also spent time getting to know Jack and Samuel. Jack was 53 and had known Nathan since the younger man was just starting out as a gambler. He treated Emma with paternal kindness and assured her that Nathan was trustworthy, which helped ease some of her concerns. Samuel was closer to Nathan's age, 27 and more reserved, but he warmed up to Emma after she beat him in a practice game of poker. "She is good," Samuel told Nathan with a laugh. "You picked well." They planned to leave for San Francisco on Monday morning, taking the stagecoach that ran between Watsonville and the city. Emma used some of her $50 to purchase a few new clothes suitable for traveling, including a practical riding skirt and jacket. She also visited her father's grave in the small cemetery outside town, standing there for a long time in the afternoon sun. "I am going to get it back, Papa," she whispered. "I am going to get our home back, I promise." On Sunday evening, Nathan invited Emma to join him for dinner at the hotel restaurant. Jack and Samuel were busy packing, so it was just the two of them at a quiet corner table. Emma wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, and she noticed the way Nathan's gaze lingered on her as she sat down. "You look lovely," he said simply. "Thank you." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Nathan laughed. "I do my best." "Listen, Emma, I wanted to talk to you before we leave tomorrow, about what we are getting into." His serious tone made Emma's stomach tighten. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong, exactly. I just want to make sure you understand what this tournament is really like. The players are not like Caldwell. They are professionals, some of them dangerous. There is a lot of money at stake, and people do desperate things for that kind of money. I need to know that you are prepared for that." "I survived 3 weeks with Caldwell," Emma pointed out. "I think I can handle some card players." "That is fair," Nathan admitted. "But I also need to know that you understand I might not win. I am good, Emma, maybe the best in California, but there is always an element of luck in cards. If things go wrong, you might be out the time and effort with nothing to show for it." Emma reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Nathan, I trust you, and even if we lose, I will be better off than I was a week ago. You gave me hope again. That is worth something." Nathan turned his hand over so their palms were pressed together. "You are an extraordinary woman, Emma Norton. I mean that." They sat like that for a long moment, hands joined, eyes locked, and Emma felt something shift between them. This was more than just a business arrangement, she realized. Somewhere in the past few days, this man she barely knew had become important to her in ways she was only beginning to understand. "Nathan," she said softly, "what happens after San Francisco? Whether we win or lose, what happens then?" Nathan's thumb traced small circles on her palm. "I do not know. I have spent so long just moving from place to place, never thinking about the future. But lately I have been thinking maybe it is time to stop running, time to find somewhere to stay. And do what? I am not sure yet, but I think I will know it when I see it." His eyes searched hers. "What about you? If you get your ranch back, is that what you want? To run cattle and live the rest of your life in Watsonville?" Emma considered the question carefully. A week ago, her answer would have been an unequivocal yes. The ranch was everything to her, her connection to her father and her past. But now, sitting here with Nathan, feeling the calluses on his palm against hers and seeing the warmth in his eyes, she was not so sure anymore. "I want my home back," she said finally. "But I am starting to realize that home might be more than just a place. It might be something you build with someone else." Nathan's expression softened. "Emma, I need to tell you something. This probably is not smart, given that we are about to embark on a business venture together, but I cannot keep pretending. From the moment I saw you in Caldwell's hallway, something in me recognized something in you. I have never felt this way about anyone before. I know it is too soon, and I know you probably think I am crazy, but I had to say it." Emma's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Nathan could hear it. "You are not crazy. I feel it too. I have been trying to tell myself it is just gratitude, that you saved me, and so obviously I feel something for you. But it is more than that. I see you, Nathan, the real you, and I like what I see. Even though I am a gambler and a drifter, you are also brave and kind and decent. Those things matter more to me than how you make your living." Nathan stood up, still holding her hand, and pulled her gently to her feet. The restaurant was mostly empty now, just a few late diners lingering over dessert. He led her out onto the hotel's back terrace, where Chinese lanterns swayed in the evening breeze and the sound of crickets filled the air. "Emma Norton," Nathan said, taking both her hands in his. "I do not know what the future holds, but I know I want you in it. Not just as my assistant or my friend, but as something more, if you will have me." Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. "I want that too, but Nathan, I need you to know that I will not be any man's property, not after what I just escaped. If we do this, we do it as equals." "I would not want it any other way," Nathan said fiercely. "Emma, you are the strongest person I have ever met. I do not want to own you or control you. I just want to be with you, whatever that looks like." Emma reached up and touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. "Then yes, let us see where this takes us." Nathan leaned down and kissed her softly, his lips gentle against hers. It was Emma's first real kiss, and it sent warmth flooding through her entire body. She pressed closer to him, her hands sliding up to his shoulders, and felt his arms wrap around her waist. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that since the moment I met you." "I am glad you finally did," Emma whispered. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms under the lantern light, and Emma felt something settle in her chest. Whatever happened in San Francisco, whatever challenges lay ahead, she was not facing them alone anymore. The next morning, Emma boarded the stagecoach to San Francisco with Nathan, Jack, and Samuel, her carpetbag at her feet and her heart full of hope. The journey took most of the day, following the dusty roads north through the coastal valleys. Emma sat beside Nathan, their shoulders touching with every bump in the road, and they talked about everything and nothing. She learned about his childhood in Nevada, the son of a saloon keeper who had taught him cards before he could properly read. He had left home at 16 to make his own way and had been traveling ever since. "Do you ever miss having a home?" Emma asked. "I used to think I did not need one," Nathan admitted. "But lately, yes, I miss it. Or maybe I just miss the idea of having someone to come home to." Emma squeezed his hand. "I understand that." They arrived in San Francisco as the sun was setting, and Emma's first glimpse of the city took her breath away. It was so much bigger than Watsonville. Buildings stacked on top of each other climbing the steep hills, the bay glittering in the fading light. The streets were packed with people from all over the world. Chinese immigrants in traditional clothing mixed with Mexican families and European businessmen and sailors from a dozen different countries. Nathan had booked rooms at a respectable boarding house near the city center. As promised, Emma had her own room, small but clean, with a window overlooking the street. After they settled in and had dinner at a nearby restaurant, Nathan walked Emma back to her door. "The tournament starts tomorrow," he said. "First round is at noon. I want you there watching the other players, looking for any signs of cheating or unusual patterns. Can you do that?" "Yes," Emma said confidently. "I am ready." Nathan kissed her goodnight, a sweet lingering kiss that made her knees weak, then reluctantly pulled away. "Get some rest. Tomorrow is important." Emma lay in bed that night, too excited and nervous to sleep right away. Everything was happening so fast. Just 2 weeks ago, she had been trapped and hopeless. Now she was in San Francisco, about to help the man she was falling in love with win a fortune. It was like something from a dime novel, too dramatic to be real. And yet here she was, living it. The tournament was held at the Palace Hotel, the grandest building Emma had ever seen. The gaming room was all dark wood paneling and crystal chandeliers, filled with well-dressed men and a few women in expensive gowns. Emma wore her best dress and tried not to feel out of place as she took her seat in the viewing area. Nathan played at table 3, along with 7 other men. Emma recognized the type immediately. Professional gamblers, card sharps, men who made their living from their wits and their skill with a deck. Nathan fit right in, his expression calm and focused as the dealer explained the rules. The first round was Texas Hold'em, a popular variant of poker. Emma watched intently as the hands were dealt and played, taking note of each player's style. There was a heavyset man with mutton chops who bet aggressively on weak hands, trying to bully the others into folding. A thin, nervous fellow who touched his collar every time he had a good hand. An older gentleman in an expensive suit who played mathematically, calculating odds with precision. Nathan played steadily, winning some hands and folding others, slowly accumulating chips. Emma could see the respect of the other players growing as they realized they were facing a true professional. By the end of the day, 4 players had been eliminated from Nathan's table. He was through to the next round. "How did I do?" Nathan asked that evening as they walked along the Embarcadero, watching the ships in the harbor. "You were brilliant," Emma said honestly. "But I think you need to watch out for the man in the expensive suit. He is very good at reading the odds and he does not let emotion cloud his judgment." Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "Frederick Callahan. Yeah, he is one of the favorites to win, but I have played men like him before. The key is to be unpredictable, to make plays that do not follow the expected pattern." "You can beat him," Emma said with confidence. "We can beat him," Nathan corrected, taking her hand. "I could not do this without you, Emma." The tournament continued over the next week. Each day brought new challenges as the field narrowed. Nathan made it through the second round, then the third, and suddenly he was in the final 8. The atmosphere in the gaming room grew tense, the stakes higher with each hand. Emma spent her days watching the games and her evenings with Nathan, walking through the city, eating at small restaurants, falling more deeply in love with each passing hour. He was everything she had never known she wanted in a partner: intelligent, kind, funny, and entirely himself. He did not try to change her or control her. He just let her be Emma and loved her for it. "If I win this tournament," Nathan said one night as they stood on a hill overlooking the city lights, "I want to use the money to buy us a fresh start. Maybe a small ranch somewhere, nothing fancy. A place we can build together." "What about my father's ranch?" Emma asked. "We will buy that back first if you want it," Nathan said immediately. "But Emma, I do not want you to feel like you have to go back to Watsonville if you do not want to. We can make our home anywhere." Emma leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. "I think I would like to go back, actually. That land has been in my family for decades. But you are right, it is not about the place. It is about building something together. If you are there with me, then it is home." "I love you," Nathan said quietly. "I know it is fast and maybe you are not ready to hear it, but I do. I love you, Emma Norton." Emma turned in his arms to face him. "I love you too, Nathan Zimmer, with all my heart." They kissed under the stars, and Emma felt the last pieces of her old life falling away. She was not the desperate girl who had lost everything to a rigged card game anymore. She was a woman in love, a woman with hope and dreams and a future that looked brighter than anything she had dared imagine. The tournament finals arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Nathan was one of 4 players remaining, including Frederick Callahan. The prize pool had grown to an astonishing $12,000, more money than Emma had seen in her entire life. The final table was set up in the center of the gaming room, surrounded by spectators. Emma took her position where she could see all the players clearly. Nathan caught her eye and gave her a subtle nod. They were ready. The game was intense from the first hand. All four players were masters of the game, and the lead changed multiple times over the course of several hours. Emma watched everything, noting the small tells and patterns that might give Nathan an edge. By early evening, one player had been eliminated, then another. It came down to Nathan and Frederick Callahan, just as Emma had predicted. The two men faced each other across the green felt, each with a substantial stack of chips. The tension in the room was palpable as the final hands were dealt. Callahan played his careful mathematical game, while Nathan mixed aggression with unpredictability, keeping the older man off balance. Emma's heart pounded as she watched the chips flow back and forth. Then came the crucial hand. The dealer laid out the flop: Queen of Hearts, Queen of Diamonds, 7 of Clubs. Nathan checked and Callahan bet $500. Nathan called. The turn card was a 7 of Spades. Nathan checked again and Callahan bet $1,000. Nathan called. Emma could see Nathan's cards from her angle, though no one else could. He had Queen of Spades and 7 of Hearts. A full house, queens over sevens. It was a monster hand, nearly unbeatable. The river card came down, Ace of Diamonds. Nathan checked one more time, and Callahan pushed all his remaining chips into the center of the table. All in. The room went silent. Nathan sat perfectly still for a long moment, his face revealing nothing. Emma knew he had the winning hand, but she also knew he had to make Callahan believe he was uncertain. Finally, Nathan spoke. "I call." Callahan revealed his cards with confidence. Ace of Hearts and Ace of Clubs. 3 aces, a powerful hand in any game, but Nathan's full house beat it. The room erupted in applause and shouts as Nathan stood, shaking Callahan's hand across the table. Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the tournament officials count out the prize money. $12,000. Enough to buy back her ranch, start their life together, and have plenty left over. Nathan made his way through the congratulating crowd to Emma, and she threw her arms around him. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Nathan said, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "We make a hell of a team, Emma Norton." That night, they celebrated with Jack and Samuel at the finest restaurant in San Francisco. Emma wore a new dress that Nathan had insisted on buying her, deep emerald green silk that made her feel like a princess. The food was incredible, course after course of dishes she had never tasted before, and the champagne flowed freely. "So what is next for you two?" Jack asked, raising his glass in a toast. Nathan looked at Emma, his eyes full of love. "We are going back to Watsonville. Going to buy back Emma's family ranch and make it our home." "And you are giving up the gambling life?" Samuel asked with a raised eyebrow. "Not giving it up entirely," Nathan said with a grin, "but maybe settling down a bit, playing for fun instead of survival. I have found something more important than cards." Emma squeezed his hand under the table, her heart so full she thought it might burst. They returned to Watsonville 2 weeks later, taking their time on the journey and stopping at small coastal towns along the way. Nathan had given Emma $5,000 of the prize money to use as she saw fit, and she used part of it to buy back her father's ranch from the land company that had purchased it at auction. The ranch had fallen into disrepair in the month since she lost it, but Emma did not care. She walked through the dusty rooms of the house she had grown up in, touching the furniture her father had built with his own hands, and cried tears of joy. "We can fix it up," Nathan said, standing beside her in the empty parlor. "Make it beautiful again." "It is already beautiful," Emma said. "Because you are here with me." They were married a month later in a small ceremony in Watsonville's new church. Rosa and Maria came from Caldwell's ranch to attend, and Jack and Samuel rode up from San Francisco to stand as witnesses. Emma wore a white dress she had sewn herself, with lace at the collar and cuffs, and Nathan wore his best suit with a string tie. The preacher, Reverend Matthews, was a kind man who smiled throughout the ceremony. "Do you, Nathan Zimmer, take Emma Norton to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Nathan said, his voice strong and sure. "And do you, Emma Norton, take Nathan Zimmer to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Emma said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Nathan pulled Emma into his arms and kissed her deeply, and the small gathering broke into applause. Emma felt like her heart might explode with happiness. She had gone from losing everything to having more than she had ever dreamed possible, all because a stranger had seen her desperation and chosen to help. They spent their wedding night in the ranch house, in the bedroom that Emma had cleaned and prepared over the past few weeks. Nathan carried her over the threshold, making her laugh, then set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Mrs. Zimmer," he said. "I love you too, Mr. Zimmer," Emma replied. They made love for the first time that night, slow and tender, learning each other's bodies with gentle hands and whispered words. Emma had been nervous, but Nathan was patient and caring, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, and Emma felt a sense of completeness she had never known. "I am so glad you walked into Caldwell's study that night," she whispered. "Me too," Nathan said, kissing her forehead. "Best card game I ever played." Over the next year, they transformed the ranch into a thriving operation. Nathan proved to be a skilled rancher, taking to the work with the same focus and determination he had brought to gambling. Emma managed the business side, keeping the books and negotiating with buyers. Together, they built something strong and lasting. Nathan did occasionally play cards, usually in friendly games with other ranchers or in tournaments in San Francisco, but it was no longer his livelihood. His real life was here with Emma, building their future together. The following spring, Emma discovered she was pregnant. She told Nathan one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, his hand resting on her still flat stomach. "A baby," he breathed, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Emma, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" She asked, suddenly nervous. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Nathan said, pulling her into his arms. "You have given me everything, Emma. A home, a purpose, and now a family. I am the luckiest man alive." Their son was born in December of 1883, a healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him Daniel, after Emma's father, and Nathan cried when he held his son for the first time. "Hello, little man," he whispered. "I am your papa, and I promise I am going to do everything in my power to give you a good life." Emma watched from the bed, exhausted but elated, and felt a wave of love so powerful it took her breath away. This was her family. This was home. As Daniel grew, the ranch prospered. They bought more cattle, hired a few hands to help with the work, and became respected members of the Watsonville community. Emma never forgot where she had come from or how close she had come to losing everything. She made a point of helping others in need, offering work to people down on their luck, and standing up to bullies like Caldwell whenever she encountered them. Caldwell himself had left town shortly after Emma's contract was voided, his reputation in ruins after word spread about his cheating. The ranch was sold to pay his debts, and Emma heard he ended up in Sacramento, running a small card room and staying out of trouble. She did not waste any energy thinking about him. Her life was too full of good things to dwell on the past. Nathan proved to be a wonderful father, patient and loving, teaching Daniel to ride and rope before the boy could barely walk. Emma would watch them together in the corral, her hand resting on her growing belly as their second child grew inside her. Their daughter was born in the summer of 1885, a tiny thing with red hair like her mother and her father's serious expression. They named her Grace because Nathan said that was what Emma had brought into his life. "Grace," he said, holding his daughter with practiced ease while Daniel climbed onto the bed beside Emma. "Welcome to the family, little one." Emma looked at her husband, her children, and felt such overwhelming gratitude that she started to cry. "Thank you," she whispered to Nathan. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved me right back," Nathan said softly. "I was just drifting through life before you, Emma. You gave me a reason to stop running." As the years passed, the Norton Zimmer Ranch became one of the most successful in the region. Emma and Nathan expanded their operation, buying adjacent land when it became available and building a larger house to accommodate their growing family. A third child, another boy they named Thomas, arrived in 1887, completing their family. The children grew up hearing the story of how their parents met, though Emma and Nathan edited out some of the more frightening details until they were older. Daniel, Grace, and Thomas all learned to play cards, though Nathan always emphasized that it was a skill for fun and fellowship, not a way to make a living or take advantage of others. "Your mother is the bravest person I have ever known," Nathan told them one evening as they sat around the dinner table. "She stood up to a man who wanted to break her, and she never gave up hope. That is the most important lesson I can teach you. Never give up, and always stand up for what is right, even when it is hard." Emma reached across the table and took his hand, their fingers intertwining the way they had that first night in the hotel so many years ago. 20 years of marriage had brought its share of challenges, droughts, and harsh winters, sick cattle and money troubles, the normal struggles of raising children and running a business. But through it all, they had faced everything together, their love growing deeper and stronger with each passing year. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Nathan surprised Emma with a trip back to San Francisco. They left the children with Rosa, who had become like family over the years, and took the stagecoach north, retracing the journey they had made all those years ago. "You remember how nervous you were?" Nathan asked as they walked through the city streets. "How you thought you did not belong in a place like this?" "I remember thinking I was crazy to trust you," Emma said with a laugh. "A stranger who promised to fix all my problems. It sounded too good to be true." "And yet here we are," Nathan said, stopping in front of the Palace Hotel where the tournament had been held. 20 years later, still crazy about each other. Emma stood on her toes and kissed him right there on the street, not caring who saw. "I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Every moment, every challenge, every joy, as long as it ended with me and you. They went to dinner at that same restaurant where they had celebrated Nathan's victory, and the owner, who remembered them from that night long ago, sent over a bottle of champagne with his compliments. "To the best hand I ever played," Nathan said, raising his glass. "To the cowboy who won me back," Emma replied, clinking her glass against his. That night, in their hotel room overlooking the bay, they made love with the passion and tenderness of people who knew each other completely, who had built a life together through hard work and devotion. Emma lay in Nathan's arms afterward, listening to his heartbeat and feeling utterly content. "Do you ever miss the gambling life?" she asked. "The excitement, the travel, the freedom?" Nathan was quiet for a moment, his hand stroking her hair. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of it, Just me and a deck of cards and nothing to worry about except the next hand. But then I think about everything I would have missed if I had kept living that way. You, the children, the ranch, waking up next to you every morning and falling asleep with you every night. I would not trade any of that for all the perfect hands in the world. I love you so much, Emma whispered. I love you too, Nathan said. Forever and always, Emma. That is the one bet I will always be willing to make. They returned home to Watsonville and their children, settling back into the comfortable rhythm of ranch life. Daniel was 17 now, nearly a man, already taking on more responsibility around the ranch. Grace was 15, smart and strong-willed like her mother, with dreams of attending a women's college in San Francisco. Thomas was 13 and quiet, happiest when he was working with the horses. Emma watched her children grow and change, and she saw pieces of herself and Nathan in each of them. Daniel had his father's steady calm and his mother's determination. Grace had Emma's fierce independence and Nathan's charm. Thomas had inherited the best of both his parents, a gentle strength that made everyone around him feel at peace. As Emma approached her 45th birthday, she found herself reflecting on the strange and wonderful path her life had taken. She had gone from desperation to joy, from servitude to freedom, from loneliness to a love that had sustained her through 2 decades of life's ups and downs. One evening, as she and Nathan sat on the porch watching the sun set over their land, she said, "You know what the best part is? I get to keep loving you for the rest of my life. However many years we have left, they are all ours." Nathan pulled her close, his arm around her shoulders. "I plan on that being a good long time, Mrs. Zimmer. I've got no intention of leaving you any time soon." "Good," Emma said firmly. "Because I am not done with you yet." They sat there as the stars came out, the same stars that had shone on the night Nathan first kissed her, on their wedding night, on the night each of their children was born. The same stars that would shine on whatever adventures still lay ahead. Daniel graduated from high school and decided to stay on the ranch, taking over more of the day-to-day operations so Nathan and Emma could slow down a bit. Grace went off to her women's college, writing long letters home about her studies and the exciting world she was discovering. Thomas became the best horse trainer in the county, earning a reputation for his patience and skill. When Emma turned 50, Nathan threw her a surprise party, inviting everyone they had ever known. Jack and Samuel came up from San Francisco, older now but still sharp as tacks. Rosa and Maria were there, and dozens of neighbors and friends from over the years. Even the preacher who had married them made an appearance. "I cannot believe you kept this secret," Emma said, looking around at the crowd gathered in their barn, which had been decorated with flowers and lanterns. "I am a professional gambler, remember," Nathan said with a grin. "I am good at keeping a straight face." Emma looked at this man who had walked into her life when she needed him most and stayed by her side ever since. His dark hair was streaked with gray now, and there were lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the California sun, but to her, he was as handsome as the day she met him. "Thank you," she said, standing on her toes to kiss him. "For all of this, for everything. Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to come to San Francisco all those years ago," Nathan replied. "Best decision either of us ever made." The party went on into the night, with music and dancing and laughter. Emma danced with Nathan, with her sons, with old friends, and she felt young again, remembering that night in San Francisco when her whole life had stretched out before her, full of possibility. As the party wound down and guests began heading home, Emma and Nathan walked out to the edge of their property, looking out over the land they had built their life on. The moon was full, casting silver light over the rolling hills. "You ever think about that night at Caldwell's ranch?" Emma asked. What would have happened if you had not helped me? All the time, Nathan admitted. And it scares me. Not because I think you would not have survived or found a way out eventually, you are too strong for that. But because I might have missed out on the best thing that ever happened to me. You changed my life, Emma. You gave me a home and a purpose and a family. You made me want to be a better man. You were already a good man, Emma said. I just helped you see it. They stood there for a while longer, arms around each other, before heading back to the house. Their life together had been built on a single act of kindness, a stranger's willingness to stand up for what was right even when it would have been easier to walk away. And from that moment, they had built something beautiful and lasting, a love story that would endure long after they were gone. Daniel married a rancher's daughter from the next county over when he was 23, and they gave Emma and Nathan their first grandchild, a boy they named Nathan after his grandfather. Emma cried the first time she held him, overwhelmed by the miracle of holding her son's son, seeing the continuation of the family she and Nathan had created. Grace graduated from college and surprised everyone by opening a school for girls in Watsonville, determined to give other young women the education and opportunities she had received. She never married, claiming she was too busy and too independent to settle down, and Emma respected her daughter's choice even as she wished Grace could know the joy of a partnership like hers and Nathan's. Thomas married young, at 20, to a gentlewoman who loved horses as much as he did. They had 3 children in quick succession, filling the ranch with the sound of young voices and laughter once again. As Emma and Nathan entered their 60s, they gradually handed over more responsibility to Daniel and Thomas, content to spend their days together doing the things they loved. They took long walks around the property, worked in Emma's flower garden, and played cards in the evenings, though now it was just for fun, with penny stakes and plenty of teasing. I still cannot believe I lost that last hand, Nathan grumbled one evening after Emma beat him with a straight flush. You are getting soft in your old age, Emma said with a laugh. I remember when you were the best card player in California. I am saving my skills for when they really matter, Nathan retorted. Besides, I already won the most important game of my life. Everything else is just practice. Emma reached across the table and took his hand. You are such a charmer. That is why I married you. I thought you married me because I saved you from Caldwell, Nathan said. That was part of it, Emma admitted. But mostly I married you because you saw me as a person, not as property or a prize. You treated me like an equal from the very beginning, and you never stopped. That is what I fell in love with. Nathan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. You made it easy to fall in love with you, Emma. You were the bravest, most beautiful woman I had ever seen, and you still are. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Daniel and his wife brought their 4 children, ages ranging from 15 to 6. Grace came from town with several of her students, young women who looked at Emma with awe when they heard the story of how she had fought her way out of servitude. Thomas and his family were already there, having moved into the old servants' quarters that had been converted into a comfortable home. Emma stood on the porch of the house she had grown up in, the house she had lost and won back, and looked at the crowd of people gathered in her yard. Her children, her grandchildren, friends who had become family over the years. All of it had started with a rigged card game and a cowboy with a better hand. Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? I am thinking about how lucky I am, Emma said. How a single moment of desperation led to a lifetime of joy. If Caldwell had not cheated me, if you had not walked into that study, none of this would exist. It is strange how life works sometimes. "I prefer to think it was fate," Nathan said. "We were meant to find each other, Emma. All the rest was just the universe making sure we did." Emma turned in his arms to face him. His hair was completely white now, and his face was deeply lined, but his brown eyes still held the same warmth and kindness that had made her trust him all those years ago. "Do you know what I love most about our life together? What? That we built it ourselves. Not on my father's legacy or your gambling winnings, but on our own hard work and love. We made something real and lasting, and no one can ever take that away from us." Nathan kissed her softly. "I love you, Emma Zimmer. I loved you when I first saw you in that hallway, desperate and brave. I loved you when we got married and started this adventure together. And I love you now, after 40 years and 3 children and more grandchildren than I can keep track of. You are my forever, and I would not change a single moment of our life together." "Not even the hard parts?" Emma asked. "Especially not the hard parts," Nathan said firmly. "Those are what made us strong, what proved that we could face anything as long as we faced it together." They rejoined the party, and Emma watched as Nathan was pulled into a game of horseshoes with his grandsons while Grace organized the younger children into some kind of elaborate game. This was legacy, Emma thought. Not land or money or possessions, but the people you loved and the memories you created together. As the sun began to set, Emma called everyone together for a speech. She stood on the porch steps with Nathan beside her, looking out at the faces of everyone she loved. 40 years ago today, she began, her voice still strong despite her age. I married the best man I have ever known. It was not a fancy wedding or a big celebration. We were just 2 people who had found each other against all odds and decided to build a life together. I had lost everything: my father, my home, my freedom. And Nathan gave it all back to me, not by solving my problems, but by standing beside me while I solved them myself. He taught me that love is not about one person saving another. It is about 2 people choosing each other every single day, through good times and bad, through joy and sorrow. I chose Nathan 40 years ago, and I choose him again today, and I will keep choosing him for however much time we have left." There was not a dry eye in the yard by the time she finished. Nathan pulled her close and whispered in her ear, "I choose you too, Emma. Today, tomorrow, and always." They cut the anniversary cake that Grace had made, and Daniel gave a toast about the example his parents had set for all of them. As the evening wore on and the children began to fall asleep in their parents' arms, Emma felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. This was what mattered. This was what lasted. Emma and Nathan lived another 10 years together on the ranch, watching their grandchildren grow and welcoming great-grandchildren into the family. They slowed down considerably, spending most of their time in rocking chairs on the porch, holding hands and watching the world go by. Nathan's health began to fail first. He developed a persistent cough that the doctor said was from years of breathing dust and smoke. Emma nursed him through his bad days, just as he had nursed her through pneumonia 5 years earlier. They took care of each other, the way they always had. On a warm spring morning, 75 years old and surrounded by his family, Nathan Zimmer passed away peacefully in his sleep, Emma's hand in his. She sat with him for a long time after, memorizing every line of his beloved face, feeling the weight of 50 years together settling over her like a blanket. "Thank you," she whispered, kissing his forehead one last time. "Thank you for everything. For saving me, for loving me, for building this beautiful life with me. I will see you again, my love. Wait for me." The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Watsonville. Nathan had been respected and loved in the community, known for his fairness, his kindness, and his devotion to his family. Emma stood at his graveside, flanked by her children and grandchildren, and said goodbye to the man who had been her partner, her lover, her best friend for half a century. After Nathan's death, Emma moved into town to live with Grace, leaving the ranch in Daniel's capable hands. She spent her remaining years helping at Grace's school, teaching the girls not just academics but life lessons about courage and independence and never giving up. She told them the story of her life often, about losing everything and finding it again, about a cowboy who had won her back with a better hand. The girls would sit enthralled, seeing in Emma a vision of what a woman could be: strong, independent, resilient, deeply loved. Emma lived to be 82 years old, a remarkable age for that time. On her last day, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, she smiled and said, "I had a good life. I loved and was loved. What more could anyone ask for?" She closed her eyes and drifted off, and those watching said she looked peaceful, as if she was simply falling asleep to join Nathan in whatever adventure came next. They buried her beside Nathan in the Watsonville Cemetery, under a simple headstone that read, "Emma Zimmer, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. She never gave up hope." Next to it, Nathan's stone read, "Nathan Zimmer, beloved husband, father, and grandfather. He stood up for what was right." The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down from Daniel to his children and grandchildren. The story of Emma and Nathan became family legend, told and retold around dinner tables and at holiday gatherings. How she had lost her freedom in a rigged card game. How the cowboy had won her back with a better hand. How they had built a life and a love that lasted 5 decades and touched countless lives. And in the quiet evenings, when the sun set over the Pajero Valley and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, some said you could still see them there, a woman with auburn hair and a tall cowboy, walking hand in hand through the fields they had worked together. Their love as strong in death as it had been in life, eternal as the land itself.